All right, guys, Cole Gordon here, and welcome back to the training. This training is on the keys to high performance, and more specifically, how to sustain consistent high performance in sales. And all of this is not just, it's beyond sales. This will apply to high performance in your business, your life, really any area. And I will tell you right now, putting this together, I was really thinking to myself, I believe this is the best training in the entire training so far up into this point. And it's also going to be the most actionable and applicable, not in terms of like a what to say standpoint on your calls, but I mean, this is stuff you can implement right away. And I truly believe this is the 20% that is going to drive 80% of your results. This is stuff that like really got me good. And that's why I teach it to you first. It's not going to be the sexy tactical stuff, and we'll get to that. But this stuff is absolutely critical. And if you really implement this and take this to heart, it's going to be a game changer for you. So let's get into it. First, just what we're going to cover here. The first thing I want to cover is just putting yourself in a position to win. And that's going to be how to set yourself up so you can hit your sales targets each week, each month, each quarter, and each year. Okay? This is going to be through what's called setting projections and also setting goals. Those are two different things. We're going to get into the difference in how to set projections, how to set goals, and also more importantly, how to hit those. Okay? Then we're also going to talk about the 2 reasons you'll miss your numbers. All right, there's basically 2 reasons it comes down to. Whenever we miss our numbers, it's okay, but we also want to diagnose and know why we missed them so we can learn the lesson and implement and not hit it the next time, or we can hit it the next time. What's not okay about missing your numbers is not knowing why, okay? So we're going to go over the 2 reasons why you missed your numbers and what to do to fix it in the meantime. We're also going to cover how to avoid ruts and sustain high performance. So this is really about how to minimize your downside in sales and in performance, as well as maximize your upside. But if you talk to any investor, they're more interested in minimizing their downside. And that's because over the long term, you're going to gain much, much more progress by minimizing your loss than by trying to maximize your highs. And you're going to keep your sanity because you're not going like, through these crazy ups and downs all the time. So we're going to talk about both, how to maximize your upside and minimize your downside. But what I really want you to start thinking about is how we can minimize our downside in sales, because that's going to be huge for you. Part of that's going to be by talking about energy management and regulation. So we'll get into that, some of the stuff I've learned, and it's worked really, really well for me in terms of that. We're also going to talk about rituals for sales success, which is basically going to take a lot of what we talk about through this entire training and boil it down to just really, really simple things you can do every single day to assure that you're always performing at a high level and that you don't fall into ruts, okay? And then if you do fall into a rut, which you will, okay, I've done all of this stuff to a T. Sometimes you slip up, you still fall into a rut. We're going to talk about how to identify it, how to break it, and how to get back to what's called baseline, okay? So that's the overview for the training. Before we get into it, I just want to give credit to Taylor Welch from Sales Mentor and Traffic and Funnels. He was one of my mentors who I learned sales under, and a lot of this stuff was inspired by him. A lot of this is what's also worked in my personal experience, but some of this is his stuff, and he is really, really, really good at the best I've ever seen at energy management and regulation. So I just want to give credit where credit's due because he is an absolute master at this stuff. And if you want to go deeper into what we talk about today, I'd recommend checking out some of his products. So anyhow, let's talk about putting yourself in a position to win and setting projections, okay? But first, what's a projection? What's a goal, okay? Goals are like your targets, all right? Goals just are what we think about with goals are. That's like what we want, okay? Projections are your bare minimum standards, okay? And it's what's ultimately we're going to use to normalize new levels of performance. Because to normalize a new level of performance, it's more about minimizing your downside and setting a baseline opposed to trying to achieve like and break a record, okay? So projections, a good way to think of them too, is that they're numbers that if all shit goes bad, like you got a 50% no-show rate and you felt like shit, you got sick one day, you're still able to hit your numbers. It's like your worst case scenario, right? And the reason it's going to be your worst case scenario is we're going to talk about hedging and the importance of that. So some more on why we set projections in addition to goals. We set both. Goals get us excited, but goals alone usually let us down. And they usually let us down without us being able to diagnose why. And I said this earlier, but missing a goal or missing a projection is okay if we learn the lesson, we know why we missed it, and we can implement it the next time to be able to fix that and be able to then hit our projection the next time. It's not okay, however, to not hit your projection, not hit your goal, and then not know why. So we always want to know why. We always want to learn the lesson, and then more importantly, implement the lesson. Now, projections also allow us to reverse engineer the path to our goals and then hedge, okay? And really this should be more of like our target, right? Projections allow us to reverse engineer the path to the actual projection and then hedge, all right? Hedging is basically increasing your activity so high that, again, your projection is like your worst case scenario. It's your bare minimum standard, right? So this is like saying, there's a great example of this is when I launched this program, I only had 10 spots, okay? Now, instead of just going out and generating 10 calls, I generated 50 calls, okay? Now, I took the first 10 and closed the first 10, all one call close, but I generated 50 calls, okay? So let's say I would have gotten sick and, maybe the pitch I created, it wasn't hitting home and I had to make a lot of adjustments and then some people canceled. Like all shit could have gone bad. I still would have hit 10. I generated 50 calls. And I really actually hedged more than that. So that's a great example of hedging. Like worst case scenario, I was getting freaking 10, period. Okay. And what that actually gave me was a sense of confidence to where I just that's how I closed all 10 in a row, is because I just knew I didn't need any one of those people. So it was just like, I have so many plates spinning that my indifference to the outcome was so high that it just gave me a lot more influence and allowed me to detach myself and just care about what was best for the person. So, and we talked about some of that in like the inner game of sales and so on and so forth. Now, projections also give us accuracy. All right. And what I mean by that is understanding what inputs determine our outputs. All right. Understanding if we send this many amount of messages or we do X amount of two-step posts or this many minutes of follow-up, that we're going to get this many calls, make this many offers, and ultimately that's going to mean this many closes, right? And we're going to keep tracking this. And I'm like I'm very, very, you'll see, I'm very, very into tracking like everything numerically. And what that allows me to do is easily diagnose what's not working, the chink or the kink in the value chain, and then be able to adjust my behavior so that next time I do hit my projection, right? And we're going to go through a chart here, and you're going to see what I mean by like how after doing this week after week, I was doing this for years, it becomes to the point where you're so accurate, okay? And ultimately, when you start to get very, very accurate, what it's going to give you is control, okay? And more so the feeling of control. And when you're in control, that leads to conviction. And when you have conviction, you can give your prospect certainty. So that alone helps you not only in your entire life, but of course on your sales calls. All right. And what I mean by control is like, I would go into the weeks when I was really in pocket too. I would go into weeks saying, I'm going to hit 6, and I'd hit 6. I would say, I'm going to hit 8 at the beginning of the week. I'd hit 8 every time, or I'd hit more, and it's just this routine of training like your being to when you say something, it happens. Okay. And all successful people, they're really, really good at doing this. So that's where we're going to train on it. Okay. So I want to talk here about how we set projections. And you got this document in week 1, module 1, I believe. And we're going to go through a little exercise here on what I mean by like how to hedge and how to set goals versus projections and so on and so forth. All right. There was a training on this in 1.1. Go through that because I think that's a little bit simpler. This one's going to talk more about like hedging and how to actually do this effectively. Okay. So say that you want to hit 10 units. All right. That's kind of your goal right now, but we're actually going to make that your projection. Okay. So now your projection is 10. Now, typically the best way to do this is, and there's no exact science here, but multiply your projection by 30 to 50%. That's going to get us our goal. So in this time, let's use 13. All right. So then what we're going to do is we're going to hedge for 13 while keeping our projection at 10. So basically what that means is we're going to hedge our behavior to do all of the actions necessary to hit 13, but then what our real projection is 10. Okay, so we're hedging here. We're doing more than what's needed to get to our projection. Okay, but our goal is 13. If we hit 13, that's like our stretch goal. We're cool. But we sure as hell better hit our freaking 10. Okay, or we're gonna die trying. So the way you do this is, I know this is projections up here, so this is kind of confusing. But what we're gonna do is make sure you want to keep your projection here just so you remember what it is, and then 13, and then we're gonna reverse engineer what we need to do to get 13. All right. Now, I'm just gonna, I put this here like you have multiple products. We'll just say you have one product. Okay. Don't worry about deposits. And then the first step is figure out how many offers. All right. So typically offer to close, let's just say you typically do, 40%, which is okay. Okay. We probably want to hedge and get it down to 30%. So let's see what we can do here. So 41, that's good enough. So see now this week, and this is like an impractical number, kind of like this would be maybe if you were doing it for your entire sales team, but 10 just makes it easy for math. So you see 41 for 13 closes. We have 31% offer to close, okay? And let's say you usually do 40. You know your numbers. It's going to help to know your numbers going into this because you want to kind of hedge with these percentages as well. So we usually do 40. We're going to say, hey, I want to do 41 offers because I usually do 40, but then if I even do 30, I'm good, all right? So now we got to know how many live consults we got to get on. And live consults is actually people picking up the phone when you call them. So let's say we got to do 60. So this gives you an offer percentage of 68%. So let's say about 65. Okay, that's good. We'll just do 65. 60% offer percentage is decent depending on your marketing. So that means 63% of the people that answer the phone, you're going to make an offer to because you can help them because your marketing is getting you the right people on the phone. So what this means then is, let's say we need 80 calls, 85 calls to do, 85 calls showing at 76% is going to give us 65 live consults, making 41 offers at a 31% offer to close is 13 closes. And you can see too, this is even like a 20% call to close ratio. Okay, so there's call to close and there's offer to close. Call to close is live consults divided by closes. Offer to close is offers divided by closes. Okay, if you need help with this, you can just let me know. But basically, you see here, like, and this is like, you're not going to take 85 calls in a week as one person. But like, let's say this is your entire sales team. You're going for 13 units this week. Okay, I'm just doing this for easy math. This is how you would want to hedge that. Okay, because then you're going to 13. Like, worst case scenario, you should get 10. Because if you got 10, it would mean your guys were closing 15%. Right? So this is why we want to hedge our leading indicators to hit our lagging indicators. All right. So I'm going to move on from this. You're going to share this document that you have with me. So you'll probably screw this up at first, but the best way to learn is by actually doing it. And I'm telling you, once you be able to build this muscle to where it's like, I want to hit 5 units this week. I know exactly what I need to do to hit those 5 units. And then you go out and do it. Your level of confidence is going to go through the freaking roof. So this is why this is so important, guys. But I want to keep going with this because I know it's going to be a long video. So let's move on. I kind of already covered this, but at the end of the week, we're going to set projections for the next week. And we're going to adjust our monthly, quarterly, and yearly projections. All right. So we're going to do that at the end of the week. Obviously, at the beginning of every month, you want to reset your ones for the month, adjust your ones from the quarterly, and you want to set each week as well. So at the beginning of every month, like in the beginning of November, we want to set the first, second, third, fourth week of November. Okay? And I already did that for you in your sheet, so you're good. Now, things we want to include here is one, like our inputs. Like what lead generation activities are we going to do? Paid or organic? How many sets are we going to attempt? Like if you're doing organic and you're doing it through Messenger, well, how many people are you actually going to try to get on a call? Sets attempted. How many long-term follow-ups are you going to do? How many people are you going to reach out to that you haven't spoken with in 2 or more weeks? How many calls are you going to get booked? How many offers are you going to make? Okay, this is all stuff that we want to like plot down and plan ahead of time in the month, what we're going to do each month, and also week by week by week. If you're not doing this, you're just guessing. So the reason I was able to get 50 calls for 10 slots, and I could have gotten more than that, honestly, but still, like that was enough, is because I planned everything I was going to be doing meticulously for weeks. Okay, and then that's why I was able to do that so quickly. Outputs as well. So we want to, plan our inputs, and then we also want to plan our outputs, our closes, our deposits, our revenues. Our leading indicators are our inputs. Those are the things we can control. So we want to just focus on hitting what we control. That's our leading indicators. Be ruthless about your leading indicators. Your lagging indicators you want to be ruthless about, but I mean it's sometimes they're out of your control, right? You might do everything right. You might have hit your hedge and everything. And you have a really bad week, the market has a downturn or whatever happens, and you miss your projection by 1, okay? Just know your leading versus your lagging indicators, and really your leadings are always your inputs, your laggings are always your outputs, okay? We want to be ruthless about the leading so that we can put ourselves in a good position to hit the lagging, which ultimately we can't really control. Yep, and at the beginning of every week, we're going to adjust monthly, quarterly, and yearly as well. So I already talked about that. So what if you're not hitting projections, though? What if you're doing this and it's not working? You're like, I'm not hitting projections. So there's basically 2 reasons, all right? The first reason is lack of hedging, all right? So we already talked about how to hedge. And look, I mean, what's going to happen with most people when you start doing this is you're going to set a projection, you're going to miss it, all right? And that's just like standard. I almost expect that with like everybody. So that's fine as long as we adjust behavior, okay? As long as we adjust behavior. And that's ultimately why we do this in the first place. That's why we set projections, is because it helps us learn these inputs equal those outputs, right? And then we can optimize as a system to be able to hit our projections and therefore hit our goals, okay? Otherwise, we're just guessing. So a great example of this, like a lack of hedging, and this is like a dumb example, but this has actually happened, okay? Is like a client has reached out to me before and been like, I'll be like, did you hit your projection? And they'll be like, no, I didn't hit my projection. And I'll be like, what was your projection? They're like, 3. I didn't hit my projection of 3 this week. And then I'll look at their sheet and they only made 3 offers. So are they hedging? No. If you make 3 offers, I mean, the only way you can get 3 is if you close 100%. Now, I have closed 100% for this program, but I would never hedge myself on closing 100%. That's not hedging at all. Okay? So most of the time with people with missing projections, it's actually hedging with your volume. Okay? If you can increase your volume high enough, especially as like a solopreneur, but even a sales rep, it's almost impossible to miss your projections. Okay? But the other reason you can miss your projections is that you're in a rut, right? And I don't want you to think like sometimes you are in a rut, right? You don't need to take 150 calls to close 5 people. Sometimes like you're just in a rut, like you're not closing the percentages that you should be. So we're going to talk about ruts right now. So first of all, a rut is really, to me, anything less than you performing at about 85 to 90% of your capacity. Okay, we've all had those days where we've been performing at 100%. Where like our conviction's so high to the point in which like we could just close anybody we speak with. Okay, but you cannot expect yourself to be like that every day. So what I want to shoot for is 85 to 90%. All right, we want to be 85 to 90% of performance capacity every single day. Okay, so with that being said, still that's a very observational thing, and we tend to lie to ourselves. So how do we know we're in a rut? Okay, before I get into that, I want to talk about regression to the mean. And what this basically means here is dips in performance that you're going to have, those are natural in the short term. Okay, if it's just a week or a couple of days, That's natural. It's going to be usually due to the quality of the people that you're speaking with. So expect there to be fluctuations kind of like week by week and day by day. But in the macro, which is I would say bi-weekly, bi-weekly, monthly and more, in the macro, it's always going to be you. Okay? So in the short term, don't get like, oh my God, I'm in a rut because 2 days went by and I didn't close anybody. All right? Not necessarily true because it's just such a shorter time frame and it's a shorter sample size. In larger sample sizes, so we're talking 2 weeks or more, it's going to be you. Okay? And I would define it like quantitatively as a 10% drop in your closing percentage, and we're talking call to close, all right? Not offer to close, call to close. We talked about that earlier. 10% drop in your closing percentage across 30 days. Okay, I actually meant to put 30 calls here. So not 30 days, 30 calls, all right? If you go 30 calls and you have a 10% drop in your closing percentage, you're definitely in a rut, okay? Now, here's the problem with this, all right? Because I've heard this advice before, and it's good advice, but here's the problem, is if we only can measure it quantitatively, then we got to take 30 calls to even know we're in a rut, right? And what happens is there's going to be times where like you might show up for one day and be performing at 60%. So how do we identify that we're in a rut for that day or 2 day span and get us out of it, if that makes sense, okay? And how do we catch it sooner? We do it through qualitative measurement. And it's specifically measuring energy across these 4 areas, all right? Physiology, clarity, necessity, and inspiration, okay? Also, we can catch it sooner if we're constantly missing our weekly projections. There's obviously an issue there as well. But let's talk about these 4 things because this is really going to help you. So the first one's physiology. This one's like super basic, but it's exercise, diet, sleep, water, and then I would even add in meditation because that's going to really help your ability to focus, okay? And I put here like a sedentary, which means they don't exercise, dehydrated, and sleep-deprived salesperson who's running on junk food for a week is not going to be able to perform at his highest capability, even if he has like the world-class mindset. All right? It doesn't matter how great your mindset is if all of these things are out the window. Okay? This is really, and it's funny because it's the most basic one, but it's the number one way to produce more energy is by nailing these. And if you're not doing meditation, I would highly, highly, highly recommend you start because it's critical. And it's just critical for your ability to focus on the call and what the prospect's saying without getting in your head. Okay? And as we know, if you're in your head, you're dead. So this one's really basic, but really important. We're going to get into more practical things you can do here in just a second. Okay? Clarity is the next thing. And what is clarity? So clarity is how aligned you are with your vision. Okay, and really the energy you're getting from your vision as well. So what I mean by that is like Tony Robbins says, life supports that which support life. And maybe he didn't make that up, but that's where I got it from. So life supports that which supports life, which means when you're entirely aligned with your vision, you get energy. Okay, and when you're entirely aligned with serving other people, you get energy. All right, you can get tons of energy from your vision. So the 2 risks here that you have, and I got these specifically from Taylor, is your vision is so big that you don't know how to get there, right? It's like you 10x your goal. You want to get $10 million, but you're making like $10K a month. Okay, so you have no idea how to get there. You're not going to get any energy from your vision because it's not realistic. This is why we set projections and we reverse engineer. The other risk is that your vision is smaller than where you're at now. Like let's say you're making 20 grand a month, but your goal was really only 10. Well, you're going to go into a rut. Like you're not going to get any energy from your vision. And the best way to set the vision is where it kind of balances both of those to where it's like a stretch, but you can see it. Okay? And it's like for like a runner at the end of a race, all right? They can see the goal, but it's like they still got to stretch. And in those situations, they get the most energy. I can think of one time where I was going for this record And I'm like I get a lot of energy from breaking records. That's just how my mind works. And I was going for this record in sales. And for like the last 10 days, I had so much energy. I was like Black Mamba in the zone because I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I could see the number I wanted to hit, but it was like I had to work my ass off to get there. It was like that perfect balance of where I needed to be. And that's really where your vision needs to be aligned. So physiology, clarity, let's go to the other two. The next one is necessity. All right. And these are the reasons why what you're doing is so important. All right. Pretty simple. But your reasons give you energy. All right. There's really two types of reasons. There's selfish reasons, and then there's unselfish reasons you have that are in the service of others. So I can't make these up for you, but I can tell you that you need to cultivate both of these. Like I have unselfish reasons because I believe that the sales training market's being underserved. I know with what I have, I can change the lives of other people. And I know even just helping somebody get from 10% closing ratio to 30% closing ratio can change their life and their business. Okay. At the same time, I have selfish reasons in that I have certain net worth goals I want to hit. I want to retire by a certain age. I want to have a certain amount of money. I want to have a certain amount of materialistic things, et cetera, et cetera. Doesn't matter what they are. It matters that they give you energy when you think about them, okay? The next one, and I hope this one's not too confusing, is inspiration, all right? Inspiration equals energy, all right? And your inspiration comes from your information that you take in. Now, when I talk about information, I mean like reading a book is information, okay? But I also want to tell you in the context of like, we're always taking in information constantly, every day, all day. This is really your inputs. And I don't mean like your leading indicator behavioral inputs like we talked about earlier. This is just your informational inputs, what you're taking in from your environment, all right? Now, what you input into yourself is going to dictate your output, all right? Because we can only influence somebody in the external world through what we have internally, all right? We can only influence somebody through our philosophy and energy that we have inside of ourselves. We can only take that and bring it outward. We can't just create that out of thin air, okay? This is why like the most influential people who sell coaching are the people who resemble who the prospect wants to become because they hold the philosophy and also the tangible situation that the prospect wants, and therefore they can influence them because that's who they are. All right? It's like who you are speaks louder than what you say, if you've heard that. Right? So the more information that we take in that is empowering, and the more we cultivate energy and philosophy that's empowering on the inside, the greater our ability will be to influence people on the outside. Okay, your inputs dictate your outputs. So like, what are bad inputs? All right, this isn't just bad information like the news, for instance, but it's also your environment. Like, is there anything going on with your friends, your family? Maybe you're dealing with upset clients. Okay, that's the information you're taking in daily. Or a big one is taking in information consistently that's supporting a different vision than what your vision is that you need to be doing right now. So a great example of this is when I was selling, I got into this like 2-month span where I was only studying real estate investing, okay? And despite what my mentor was telling me at the time, I just really, really believed that that was what I needed to study. In those 2 months, I went into a huge rut, okay? A big reason for that is that all of my information I was taking in all day, every day was about investing, and I didn't start taking in the motivational stuff, the sales stuff, and a lot of the information that I was taking in when I was performing at my high, okay? So it's really, really important to be cognizant of your environment as well as the information, the books, and everything that you're taking into your system, because again, what you're inputting in dictates what you output out and how you influence, all right? If you need clarification for this, let me know because we can coach on it. But I'm telling you, this is one of the biggest breakthroughs I've ever had. And it might seem a little bit esoteric, might seem a little bit like philosophical, but it is it's a game changer, guys. Some good inputs to have the number one thing by far is listening to your past wins. All right? Listening to calls where you enrolled the prospect. You had to get them over their fears. You had to coach them when they were scared, they wanted to give up. Okay? Listening to your past wins. This also includes like client testimonials as well. And then some other stuff that I would listen to as well is I always would be intaking like good information in terms of sales, right? Sales courses, sales books. Now, don't like try to get stuff that's a little bit more current because a lot of the old school type of selling doesn't work anymore. So this is obviously a great thing to listen to over and over and over again. There's personal development. Like I really like Tony Robbins. Biographies like Elon Musk. I'm not a big biography person, but reading about people's other people's stories is a great way to get inspired as well. And then just like general like motivational content. Like there's one speech I listened to from a guy named Ed Mylett. I've listened to it over and over and over again. It's phenomenal. And like I listen to it and I want to get in a 3-point stance and like run through a wall because it's that good. Now you might be asking, well, like, because in this example, well, what if like I'm selling on the phone, I'm selling my coaching, but I still want to learn about real estate? What I would recommend that you do, okay, is make your morning inputs, you can't see this now, but make your morning inputs more about the selling and your afternoon and evening inputs more about like building wealth and more of the long-term stuff. But make sure the information that you're taking in the morning is putting you in that prime state to where you're inspired, because that inspiration equals energy. You're going to transfer that energy to somebody on the phone. So how do we kind of regulate these, right? Because I was saying how we keep ourselves from falling into a rut is we want to manage those 4 things. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to show you how to do this in a end of day routine later in this training, is each night we're going to rate ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10 based on our energy, all right, based on those 4 areas. If you're an 8 or above, I would say you're in pocket. If you're a 7 or below, you're either out at risk or out of pocket. Now, if you're rating yourself, the key is here, you got to be ruthlessly honest with yourself. When in doubt, give yourself a lower rating than you think. Because the one person you shouldn't lie to is yourself, right? So you'd be better off saying, oh man, I'm like a 5 or a 6 on my physiology. I need to up that next morning and then never fall into the rut in the first place. Then tell yourself you're at a 9 and then you fall down to, you keep lying to yourself. The next thing you know, you've been in a rut for 2 or 3 weeks and you got to break yourself out of that. So, just some tips on how to determine what your number is, 1 to 10, is physiology-wise, ask yourself, are you getting enough sleep and waking up on time? Okay? Preferably 7.5 hours or more of sleep and going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time every night. I personally go for 8.5 hours a night, and I always go to bed at 8:30 and wake up at 5 a.m. I've been doing that for years. I will tell you, because I used to just be all over the place, okay? And I used to screw up on all of this stuff. But this was the main one, sleep, to where once I got this in place, that's how I really got into the 30 to 40% closing ratio. And then eventually I got that a lot higher than that. But I'm telling you, I was on a different team. None of you guys would know this company, but I was on a team one time, and it was the first team I was ever on. And I'm telling you, once I regulated my sleep, everybody on the team was asking me, like, what are you doing differently and how are you closing so well? And so consistently, I did that for months above 30%. And it was this. That was the only thing I changed. And believe me, I never went back because it's that powerful. Especially the main one is going to bed on time and waking up on time. If you just do it at the same times every night, it really helps regulate. I don't know if it's your emotions or your like neurochemicals or whatever it is, but it really, really helps. Now, this other stuff is pretty simple, and we've kind of talked about it. Are you following a healthy diet? I'm not going to give you the diet training here. I don't like to eat any carbs until I've already completed my day. I like to intermittent fast, but really just, you know what healthy eating is. You know what makes you feel good. Do that. Are you drinking water? Are you exercising and moving daily? I would do it prior to your calls and get your physiology going prior to the calls, okay? Are you meditating? Again, prior to calls, because that helps your focus and helps you get out of your head tremendously. Now, vision. Okay. Did you review your vision today and write out your goals? Every single day, and you'll see this, you'll see my routine later. I review my what's called identity document and I write out my goals. Okay. Every single day, that gives me inspiration that also aligns me with my vision. You want to do it every morning. And also ask yourself, is your vision inspiring? Does it have the gap that we talked about? All right. Or is this 10X Nation? So, and the last one is, do you have an idea of closing the gap? Like, is it close enough to where you know what to do to be able to get there? You have an idea of how to get there, but it's also not so close to where it's boring and not so far away to where it's overwhelming. Necessity, moving on here, can you easily think of the reasons why, selfishly and unselfishly, this is so important to you? If you can't, like, on the spot all the time, all day, every day, remember the top two or three reasons why you're doing what you're doing, you don't have this, okay? You're not at 8, 9, or 10 plus on the scale. So you have to ask yourself, what are your reasons? Do you know them like that? And do they give you energy? Just be honest with yourself, all right? Now, some inspiration, and I think if the prior inspiration confused you a little bit, this is going to be a little bit more practical. Inspiration, are you doing daily gratitude? How many wins are you listening to a week? I would listen to at least 3. My suggestion is to listen to them on 1.5 or 2 times speed as well. Just kind of makes it less painful to listen to them sometimes. Also, when's the last time you listened through or looked through your client testimonials? So like even now, I have like a Dropbox folder of all the people I've ever helped and who've reached out to me and thanked me for a variety of different things. You want to go through those once a week and just remind yourself of your wins. And they can be actually your personal wins as well. Also, what are you listening to in the mornings, right? We talked about this. I would recommend sales, personal development. There's one sales training specifically. It's like a 12-hour training. I listen to this probably 15 times over because what I found was that when I was at my best in sales, I was listening to that in the morning. So I just kept repeating that. And lo and behold, it worked. Okay? So I know that's kind of a weird one, but just believe me, think about what you're listening to in the morning. Also, is there anything else in your environment, friends, family, relationships, your inputs, the information that you're getting in, that's affecting your state negatively? And again, if it's affecting your state negatively, then what is that going to do to your influence? It's going to affect you negatively because your inputs dictate your outputs and your outputs dictate your influence. Now, aside from these 4 things, what are some other things you can do to identify ruts? I learned this from Brad Newman, and one of the ones that I thought was really, really good is ask somebody that's close to you, this today or this week or even this month, what has been your experience of me? And really see if your default state has been like anxiety, fear, pain, guilt, any of those negative type of emotions. Okay? Also, are you hitting your projections weekly? Right? The downside is this weekly. Sometimes you're going to miss your projections. So don't let this be your be all end all. I've hit projections that have been in pocket. So you don't want to overcorrect here. But at the same time, if you're missing your projections time and time again, there's something there, right? Another big one is, have you lost your aggression? All right? Are you letting people off the hook? Because if there's a lack of leadership here, there's a good chance that you're in a rut for one reason or another. And then also, and this is probably the most important one, are you breaking promises to yourself? All right? And this is probably the hardest one, but it's so, so true. Here's the thing is that when you plan, we'll talk about planning tomorrow today in this training, but when you plan tomorrow today, which means planning the next day, the night before, what you promise to yourself and you put on your calendar that you're going to do that day, you must do. Right? It's not you should do, you must. Right? If you project 5, you must hit 5. You want to break the least amount of promises to yourself if possible, if any. Okay? And again, this is going to build that sense of accuracy to where when you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. It's almost ingrained in your being that it's going to happen. Okay? And that increases your conviction, which increases your certainty. And again, 2 of the emotions that your prospect needs to have to buy, well, one of them is certainty. this is how you build it. It's how you build confidence. It's how you build momentum. So now we know how to set projections. We know the 2 reasons why we miss projections. We know what ruts are. We know how to diagnose them. So the question is, again, how do we put this all together and kind of distill it down practically so it's very, very simple so that we know how to sustain high performance and we can keep ourselves out of ruts. And we do this through what I call high performance rituals, all right? Tony Robbins says, show me your rituals and I'll know your standards. Show me your standards and I'll know your results, okay? I don't know if that's verbatim the quote, but he says that all the time, so I had to put it there, and that's where I got it from. But there's morning and night rituals, at least, and this is how I do it, okay? There's probably a million different ways you can do this, but I think just showing you what I do and what's worked for me, this is exactly what I was doing when I was selling full-time, and I still do this, but it's exactly what I was doing when I sell full-time. I think you just being able to see this and model it and change it for yourself is going to help you tremendously. But basically, it's pretty simple, okay? And you'll see how it hits all of the areas I listed here. But in the morning, the first thing I do is read. I do that for inspiration. The second thing I do is I listen to my identity document. So I do that through audio. And that gives me inspiration, clarity, necessity. Because there's necessity, I list my reasons in there. Of course, it's my vision. And then anytime you're going with your vision, you're also inspired. Then I'll do exercise. And then as I'm exercising, I also either listen to a call that's a win, or I'll listen and do some inspiring content that's going to be productive for whatever I'm doing that day. Now, if you're selling every single day, listen to sales, okay? What that's going to do is it's going to ramp my physiology, and it's going to inspire me. The next thing is I do breath work and meditation. I would categorize those both in physiology, okay? And then I also do identity document. I write out my goals. I do my gratitude. I set intentions. And I just put ICN, but that's inspiration, clarity, necessity, okay? Then at night, I plan tomorrow today. So I just, very, very simple. I plan what I'm going to do the next day today. If you're not doing that, it's like the best productivity hack ever. I don't even know if it's a hack. It just should be like your standard. But it is critical. And I plan every week before the week too. Same thing as like projections. Plan the week before the week, plan tomorrow today. Okay, it's huge. Also update your projections every night, every evening. And then you do your end of day journal. So I'm going to show you what I do here as well, and you guys will have access to this document. But every single day, and this is going to be, guys, like you're going to look at this and you're going to be like, dude, I can't, like this is intense. But I mean, this is how you get to be the best. So I'm going to tell you what it is, and then it's up to you to implement. Every single day I fill out this, and then I make a copy of this, and then I put it in a Google Drive folder. So there's one for every single day. So ultimately I can look back at these. All right. First thing is I list out all the consults. Okay. So the names, what happened, what was great, what could be improved. So it's like prospect 1, prospect 2, prospect 3, what happened, what was great, what could be improved. Fantastic. Then I also list out all the leading indicator activities, like 30 minutes on Messenger, worked, spent $30 on Facebook ads, did whatever else, right? I made, 10 set attempts through Messenger. Okay, so this is going to be your hedging, the activities you're using to hedge. If we just journal about these every day, what it does, the reason this is important, guys, is it brings up our awareness of what's going on, and we'll see very early in the week, we're not in line with our hedging at all, okay? So we need to correct, or we need to change projections. Then we're going to free journal on the day. I just free willy journal on all my feelings. And then what's great about the last 24 hours, I always talk about what did I learn today, what anxieties or depressions kept me from being fully present in the moment. Where was I triggered today? What is something I need to take responsibility of right now that's tough? How would I advise somebody dealing with the same struggles? Who can I reach out to for help around this? And this is a necessity question. What's the reason doing what I'm doing is so important? My grammar's not very good. So all of these questions, they're strategic, Okay. This anxiety and depression and triggering one, I have a journaling routine that's called a correction routine. It's a little bit different. I think it's beyond the scope of this training, but I do corrections in the mornings based on what triggered me the day before. If you want to learn about that, I can forward you to the right people. So then I go over all of these ratings, and we talked about these earlier. We want to rate ourselves scale of 1 to 10: physiology, clarity, necessity, inspiration. And then some of these ones are good too. Did I serve people today? Did I honor my promises to myself? This is what we were talking about with accuracy and doing what you say. And this is also, did you honor your promises to yourself? Like when you said you were going to get up in the morning and do your ritual, which was 5:30 a.m. workout, did you do it? Don't miss that stuff. Don't break those promises to yourself. Did you operate at your potential today? And are you going to hit projections this week/month? Obviously, this is not like a yes or no. This is like scale of 1 to 10, your confidence level here. And then your overall performance. And then I would add, because in my personal one, I have stuff about my health. Did I make time for play and make time for relationships? Stuff like that. I rate myself on that as well. So you can just kind of add whatever else you want there. Then I finish out with, what am I grateful for? And then what are my intentions for tomorrow? This one's really important because when you set the intentions for the next day and then you sleep on it, your brain's going to, I don't know how it works, but whatever, it optimizes for that the next day. There's a lot of science behind that. Not my specialty, but I do it because I know it works. So I'll give you guys a copy of this. This is like, I'll tell you what, I fought myself to do this for a long time, but I am telling you, it is one of the best habits I have ever developed in my life, okay? And you'll see why it's so important in just a second when we talk about breaking ruts, but guys, like, please do this because it's really, really helpful. So, doing everything we talked about so far, it's going to minimize your ruts. We talked about maximizing your upside, but more importantly, minimizing your downside. But we're still going to get in ruts, guys. I've done all this stuff, and I still have fallen into ruts. So what do we do then when we get in a rut? How do we identify it? And once we do that, what do we do? Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is diagnose the source of the rut. And then the second thing we're going to do is reset the baseline. All right, and I'm going to talk about this right now. So there's basically 3 steps, and this is super, super simple stuff. So the first step is we identify the source of the rut. Now, before I even say this, your biggest risk, guys, with sales and just performance in life in general, is falling into a rut, but then not knowing you're in a rut because of your ego. All right, you have denial that you think you're not in a rut, that you're performing at a high level when you're not doing any of your behaviors, you're not doing any of your disciplines, you're not doing any of your rituals, your physiology's out the window, and you're in a rut. This is the definition of what I would do when I was in ruts. I would lie to myself that I wasn't in a rut and stay in a rut longer than I should have. The great thing about identifying that you're in a rut is that you can actually do something about it. But if you never identify it, you are effed. Okay? So first, the best way to do this, it's like running diagnostics. We need to diagnose the area. All right? There's physiology, clarity, necessity, and inspiration. All right? Based on your scores, what's missing? Once we know what the area is that we're missing, we need to find the baseline. All right? So what we're going to do, and you always should be listening to your wins. This will actually really help you prevent ruts in the first place. So always be doing this. But find your baseline. So this is what you do. You go back onto your end of day and your end of week reviews. I just showed you end of day. I have a separate one that's end of week. You go back into these and you find out, okay, like in March, I was super in pocket, right? I was like, I broke a record. And you want to reread through those journals. That alone, it's like crazy how obvious it'll be what's different. And you'll see, oh, okay, I was going through this sales training then, and I was going through all of these trainings. I was reading the right books. I was getting up and working out in the morning, and I'm not doing any of that now, right? That, I mean, and it would become so painfully obvious what's different that you'll know what to change, and you'll get back to baseline, okay? And I put here, you're going to go through all this stuff, and then you're going to ask yourself, what's different? So some examples here is there was one time I was traveling and I went through this huge rut. And when you look back at my journals, when I traveled, my physiology went out the window because I didn't work out one time. I didn't do any of the identity slash vision stuff that I usually do, which also included reviewing my reasons. And I didn't listen to any of the right inputs. Okay, well, no wonder I was in a rut that week. Another example is there was one rut I was in where I looked back and I looked back at my best month ever to find baseline, and I was going through this sales training by Tony Robbins. And I've gone through this sales training now. After I discovered that, and that when I was in pocket, I was going through this, I started going through this a little bit each morning, and I've been through it probably 15 times. And it works. So that's what I mean by first identifying the source, finding the baseline. You want to go back into your journals, listen to call reviews. And then once you do that, forgive yourself, get back to baseline, make the changes, and then journal about the lessons in your end of days and end of weeks so you can avoid it happening again. All right? This one, I'll tell you what, easier said than done because I'm just somebody kind of high ego, kind of stubborn to where I just trick myself into not feeling like I'm in a rut a lot. But this is what you really should do, and you need to start reviewing this stuff a lot and humbling yourself, because what it's going to do is keep you honest, and then you're not going to make the same mistakes again, and you'll progress in your life, in your business, and in sales. So that is it for week 1. Just to kind of review, we covered sales first principles, which is about the philosophy of how people buy, why people buy, and ultimately what they buy. We talked about the inner game of sales, which is mindset. Okay. And also, this training was on the keys to high performance. So what's next is going to be what's called the Pitch Codex system. All right. And guys, I know this week has been kind of high level and philosophical, and it's very like there's not like practical things to do or say, right? This is where it's really, really going to get sexy. And if this hasn't served you, I guarantee fixing your pitch will change the game for you. So I'm super excited to get into it, guys. That's it for this training. If you have questions, hit me up. You have access to me, and we'll talk soon.